Welcome to Archival. I'm your host, Juanita Tolliver. A diary is a precious thing. In middle school, mine held my hopes, my fears, even my crushes. It was sacred to me. It was sacred right up until my sisters pried it open and read it from cover to cover. Cheers to siblings, right? My sisters aside, that diary was an unfiltered version of me that I never expected anyone else to read. It was my imprint and an honest snapshot of who I was at the time. Considering how I felt about my diary, it makes complete sense that I felt like I was somewhat violating Ida B. Wells-Barnett's privacy when I came across hundreds of pages of her cursive handwritten diary in the University of Chicago Library Digital Archives. The ink on the pages was pale, but Ida's cursive strokes were intentional as she took up every available space on the lined paper, even squeezing in words by writing in a vertical slope in the margins to ensure that everything she wanted to remember was included. There was an urgency that still jumps off of these photocopied pages, which are dated from 1885 to 1887. And that makes complete sense, because in December 1885, she would have been 23 years old, that age where many people are adults but impatient about becoming or evolving into a fully realized adult who has it all figured out, which, let's be real, does not exist at all. But she was branching out, leaving her hometown of Holly Springs, Mississippi behind and searching for herself, searching for a way to explore what she really wanted, what excited her. I appreciate that Ida B. Wells was in an in-between phase of life. She wasn't who she used to be, but she hadn't fully transformed into who she would become. It's a frustrating place to be. And in her diary, she even wrote, quote, "I am not happy, and nothing seems to make me so. I wonder what kind of creature I will become eventually." It's thrilling to see this side of her, but it also felt intrusive. Just like me, she never wrote these words for anyone but herself. And according to Miriam DaCosta Willis, editor of the 1995 transcription, The Memphis Diary of Ida B. Wells, she kept her diary locked in a portable desk. With that front of mind, I want to be extremely respectful and gentle as I share the humanity that is written throughout Ida B. Wells' diary. Humanity that is separate and apart from the work that the whole world over knows her for, and humanity that shows that she is as imperfect as all of us. This is Archival. Investigative journalist, educator, civil rights activist, writer. These titles represent what Ida B. Wells-Barnett is best known for. Her seminal works included the Southern Horrors pamphlet in 1892 and the Red Records in 1895, both data-driven, heartbreaking reports that featured witness statements from her interviews with people in Southern states about lynching and targeted crimes against Black people who were often demonstrably innocent. Ida's writing ensured that the nation and the world bore witness to the repeated mob violence of white people and the violence and trauma that Black people were subjected to. And I have no doubt that she would have an explicit opinion about the fact that it wasn't until 2022 that an anti-lynching law was enacted in the United States. In addition to her writing, Ida B. Wells was a well-documented voting rights advocate who established the Alpha Suffrage Club in Chicago for Black women, and who marched proudly with the Illinois delegation during the National American Woman Suffrage Association's march in Washington, D.C. in 1913. By walking with the Illinois delegation, Ida B. Wells defied the white women organizers who instructed all Black women to march at the back of the procession. I'll never forget Brittany Cooper's references to this historic confrontation in her book, Eloquent Rage, as Cooper described the moment when a young student expressed to her that she wasn't a feminist because, quote, "I still don't forgive them for how they treated Ida. While I am a feminist, let's be real, I haven't forgiven them either." All of these titles are how many people describe Ida B. Wells today. And it begs the question, who was she at a human level? What was she like as she transitioned into adulthood? How does she navigate her life and work transitions from teacher to journalist to activist and leader? Thankfully, the Memphis Diary helps to paint the outlines of a picture of who she was at the time. Before her first entries in 1885, Ida B. Wells had been prematurely thrust into adulthood and grown-up responsibilities. Only 7 years prior, she lost both of her parents and her little brother to yellow fever, and at 16 years old, she became a caregiver to her other 6 younger siblings with support from her grandmother, her aunt, and Masons who were friends of her father. To help provide for her siblings, she worked full-time as a teacher, lying to school administrators about her age in order to get the job. By December 1885, Ida had moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and she was struggling with the tension of earning a consistent salary by teaching and her burning desire to write and create. She was managing the two roles, and her work was being published in Black newspapers with large circulations, including the New York Age and the Living Way. But her desire for more opportunity, more published articles, more social impact was abundantly clear in her diary. Memphis was essentially Ida B. Wells' training ground. She took elocution lessons to work on her public speaking abilities. She joined the Lyceum, a literary club, which she was later elected to lead. She developed her fashion sense and wardrobe, buying new dresses, gloves, shoes, and sewing patterns regularly. And at the start of her Memphis Diary, she was adjusting to a bit of a double life as a teacher during the work week and a writer being published consistently in newspapers across the country. While teaching was Ida's full-time job, she didn't write about it nearly as much as she wrote about being a published writer. In her first diary entry dated December 29th, 1885, she wrote, "Mr. Fortune sent me 10 copies of the paper with my article entitled Woman's Mission in it, characterizing it a beautiful essay. Sold 2 copies and will sell the others too. It reads very well, but a little disconnected." Ida's article, Woman's Mission, was printed in the New York Age, and Mr. Timothy Fortune was the co-founder and editor. Based on Ida's intentions to sell the copies of the paper, it seems as though that was effectively her compensation for writing. Compensation was a recurring subject in the Memphis Diary, especially since it was Ida B. Wells' aim to make a living as a writer. And she began describing her negotiations with publishers in March 1886. In an entry on March 11th, she wrote, "Received a letter from the Plain Dealer Company who wished to know what I will charge for 2 letters per month to their paper. Answered today and stated that I would do as he wished for $2 per article. Don't know what they will say. Sent the article I have been writing on for some time to Mr. Arno today entitled Our Name." Ida was setting her rate, and she was taking a risk by asking for what her writing was worth. What I appreciated most while reading this particular diary entry is that she registered her anxiety or fear at their response when she wrote, "Don't know what they will say." But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because her number was set and the letter was mailed. She was doing it scared. And that was deeply relatable. Also, Ida was expanding. As she noted, she submitted an article to Mr. John Arnu, an actor, journalist, and at the time, owner of the New York Enterprise, the black newspaper with the largest circulation in the nation in 1886. That year, Ida, who was writing under the pen name Iola, was fielding offers to write from plenty of publications. But some of the offers had questionable compensation schemes. On one hand, there were offers to be a paid contributor, and Ida was negotiating her rate. On the other, there were offers for her to sell papers to earn money, including the offer from the Little Rock Sun. Ida described it in her diary on January 5th, 1886, writing, "Found a letter from Mr. Fulton of Little Rock offering me a scheme to have a branch of his paper published here, and I get my pay by selling the papers. Shall not accept, as I could not make it pay." This mirrors her selling the copies of the New York Age when her article Woman's Mission was featured, but she had no desire to take on the responsibility of running a newspaper branch in Memphis without a guaranteed salary. And honestly, why should she? Remember, she's trying to support herself, and schemes aren't worth her time. She set a healthy boundary, but some of the other compensation schemes are worse. The editor of the Indianapolis World reached out to Ida in October 1886 about engaging her as a paid contributor to the paper. But in her November 28th diary entry, Ida wrote, "The Indianapolis World has at last decided on the remuneration I shall receive for the article I sent them and gives me 2 years subscription to his paper, sending me the receipt for one after placing my name on his roll book as an honorary subscriber." Cheeky that. She followed up on December 21st with, "The World sends me 2 years subscription to the World as pay for my article. I sent them to Jim," that's her brother, "and will write no more for them. They write to ask a communication for Christmas, but they will not get it." I like to imagine Ida slamming her diary shut after writing that line, but in her own way, she continues on, pivoting in the next line to describe the letters that she received that week, the Lyceum and their work, and her callers during the holiday season. She was sick of these people who were devaluing her work with their non-monetary compensation. The energy of this entry, honestly, in my mind, it matched Rihanna's vibes in her hit song, "Bitch Better Have My Money." Payments aside, Ida also experienced a few rubs engaging with newspaper editors. For example, in a February 2nd diary entry, she described friction with an editor and correspondent for The Bee, a newspaper in Louisville, Kentucky. Ida wrote, "Found a letter from my Louisville correspondent who thinks I said more than I intended when I spoke of the fact of my being his senior as unpleasant, and objects to being patronized as the expression 'my youthful friend' seems to imply. LMB seems to gloat over the fact of fighting back against Iola with a vengeance. I don't know whether it is worth my while to try and make him understand my reasons for refraining in answer to the Bee's squib." Based on her tone here, youthful friend didn't want any written sentiments of being inferior to her in any way because she was a woman. And it is unclear what vengeance he intended to inflict, but Ida seems to have gotten over it quickly because, yet again, in the next line, she's writing about a completely different letter that must be completed before she goes to bed. As Ida grew into her role as a columnist, she became more discerning as she sought opportunities to practice her craft. She also took time to try her hand at writing fiction, but it didn't go very well. Here's how Ida described her first attempt at a fiction essay on September 1st, 1886. "Today witnessed my first essay in story writing. I have made a beginning. I know not where or when the ending will be. I can see and portray in my mind all of the elements of a good story. But when I attempt to put it on paper, my thoughts dissolve into nothingness. Whew, I appreciate this line because it is deeply vulnerable of Ida to share her reality, her struggles. And let's be real, I recognize this specific struggle intimately. Here she was, making a first attempt at a new genre and celebrating the beginning while recognizing her limitations. Still, a start is a start. In the midst of what Ida described as dissolving into nothingness, she was stretching herself and exploring her identity as a writer. But while she focused squarely on her career aspirations, her lack of a husband and children became more socially pronounced, so to speak, and that prompted rumors about her lifestyle. More on that after this quick ad. I still can't believe it, y'all. I am an award-winning author. In February 2026, I won an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work for my book, A More Perfect Party, the night Shirley Chisholm and Diane Carroll reshaped politics. I am so proud of my first book, and to be recognized by the NAACP is deeply special. Haven't read A More Perfect Party yet? No worries. You can buy a copy at bookshop.org, and I put the link in the show notes to make it easy for you. I prefer shopping at bookshop.org because 80% of their profit margins goes to independent bookstores. Just click the link in the show notes. On February 1st, 1887, Ida B. Wells declared in her diary, "I am the only lady teacher left in the building who is unmarried." With her friends and colleagues all paired off, Ida felt a degree of isolation in spite of the fact that she had many suitors who expressed a clear interest in being with her. In that same diary entry, she wrote of a Mr. Poole who wanted to know, quote, "if I was to be married," declaring how he was affected by it and conjuring me to tell him by memory of what had been if it were true. I sent a few lines stating that if he desired my happiness, to come home and help make me happy. I know not what he will think of it, but I feel singularly lonely and despondent, and wrote on the spur of the moment. Ida had been receiving callers in Memphis for years, but none of her connections progressed to marriage. But in doling out rejections, the men who pined for Ida lobbed barbs and negative labels at her, including describing her as a, quote, "heartless flirt," and someone incapable of love. Some of these rejected men would even attempt to retaliate against her professionally and personally. For example, professionally, in 1886, Ida had effectively been pushed out of a teaching opportunity in Kansas City, Missouri, when the local teachers organized against a, quote, "imported teacher," after one editor published a letter in his newspaper that called on the local community to reject teachers hired from out of state. On a personal level, some of the jilted men spread disrespectful rumors about Ida's family, her morality, and her values. On October 2nd, 1886, Ida wrote in her diary, "Mr. Graham informed me that a letter was sent to him to get information concerning our moral status, as it was there rumored that we had been dismissed for immoral conduct here. I had not expected anything like that, and it angered me somewhat. I have sent a letter to Mr. Bowser telling him I would like to know if there was such a rumor afloat, that I might know if the Kansas City people would attempt to blacken the reputation of those who desired only to sojourn among them." This diary entry reads as though Ida resigned herself to asking the questions that she could and then simply moving on. That may be because she had practice moving on from other rumors about her personal life. There was the rumor that she wrote in her diary on October 12th, 1886, that men claimed her little sister Lily was not her sister at all, but her secret child. Another rumor that spread was that she was the mistress of a local preacher. In response to all of this, she did her best to stay calm. On October 12, 1886, she wrote, "I could not help getting furiously angry, but have controlled my anger." And on December 28, 1886, she wrote, "I have had a good time, but the pleasure has not been wholly unalloyed. I have heard things that cause the iron to enter my heart, but I must learn to bear them and meet them in a more unmoved manner, to be more calm and philosophical." Men, especially men who lashed out after being rejected, have long been the ire of strong women. And while Ida tried to limit her reactions to the disrespect, they thoroughly pissed her off. They pissed her off to the point that she continued to reject gender norms and social expectations, almost as if to spite them. I'll be honest, I cheered when she wrote, "I have been so long misrepresented that I began to rebel," on April 29, 1886, because she effectively used their hateful, pathetic accusation as fuel to reject patriarchy. Before we close out this episode, I want to share some of the research that nearly got left on the cutting room floor. It's time for my favorite segment, One Last Nugget. In addition to being an all-around badass, Ida B. Wells was a civil rights activist who refused to give up her seat on a public train, and then she sued the train company. According to the court filings and witness statements preserved in the Middle Tennessee State University archives in September 1883, Ida B. Wells was minding her business as she boarded the first-class car of the Chesapeake, Ohio and Southwest Railroad train from Memphis to Woodstock, Tennessee. That's when a conductor approached her and reviewed her ticket. Although she had purchased a first-class ticket, the conductor told her that she was required to ride in the smoking car because she was Black. The 21-year-old Ida refused and remained in her first-class seat. Outraged, the conductor grabbed her arm and Ida fought back, physically and legally. Ida resisted as the conductor grabbed her, and the scuffle escalated as other passengers jumped in to restrain and remove her. In the process, her dress was ripped and one sleeve was almost entirely torn off. After the harrowing experience, Ida promptly filed a lawsuit against the Chesapeake, Ohio and Southwest Railroad Company. And on Christmas Eve in 1884, she won the case and was awarded $500. Unfortunately, that win was short-lived because that lower court ruling was overturned on appeal by the Tennessee Supreme Court in April 1887. And Ida wrote these heartbreaking words in her diary that week. "The Supreme Court reversed the decision of the lower court in my behalf last week. I felt so disappointed because I had hoped such great things from my suit for my people generally. I have firmly believed all along that the law was on our side and would, when we appealed to it, give us justice. I feel shorn of that belief and utterly discouraged. And just now, if it were possible, I would gather my race in my arms and fly far away with them." Sadly, the despair Ida felt nearly 140 years ago mirrors the despair that many Black people, Latino people, Indigenous people, Asian people, LGBTQ people, elderly people, women, people who are poor, and people who are disabled feel today as entire systems are leveraged to oppress and harm them. It's a tale as old as this nation. And what I appreciate most about Ida B. Wells is the fact that after receiving this heartbreaking ruling and confronting the lack of justice available to her as a Black person and a woman, is that she still used her gifts to fight. She organized her community. She wielded the power of her pen. And she ensured that the world witnessed that injustice and devastating harm through her eyes and her experiences. Thank you for listening to Archival. I am amazed at how life unfolds for each of us. For Ida B. Wells-Barnett, her willpower and clarity for the life and the work that she desired and frankly demanded, laid the foundation for the legacy she is known for today. I'm grateful to her for bearing witness and ensuring that others could do the same across space and time through her work. As a girl who grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, I am embarrassed that I only recently learned about her Memphis diary. And I'm thrilled that her cursive entries could provide a glimpse of who she was, how she nurtured her dreams, and how she navigated society's gendered expectations during a transitional stage of her life. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, subscribe and rate Archival wherever you get your podcasts. Archival is a production of J. Tolliver Media, LLC.